let's kind of flip it and now say, okay, so what are startups looking for in candidates so that I can be presenting myself as the best candidate possible? So one thing I know that I always am looking for is that ambiguity piece. Like, do you understand that we may be going one direction, and not that we're just going to spin around for no reason, but if we get new data, that may change. And so that dealing with ambiguity or not having all the information necessary when you start a project, like that's something that when I'm hiring, I really look for within a candidate. What have been some of the things in your experience that you've looked for candidates for startups?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a number one is having somebody that's comfortable with being able to move the ball forward without having maybe all the answers or everything fleshed out. And essentially being able to navigate that world and figure out a way to get some momentum moving forward as you kind of figure it out along the way. I think another piece is being able to turn on a dime. So one thing you're working on that you're pouring all your your heart and soul into for 3 months may change focus, and you may get direction of like, okay, that's no longer the direction that we're going in. Can you stop that immediately and start working on X, Y, and Z? And that can be, that can have an emotional toll. So really understanding if a candidate has gone through a similar experience or is prepared for that type of scenario
Mhm.
is always essential in sort of interviewing through a startup.
Yeah, I do a whole training and workshop on whiplash, like how to help people through change. Because even if people are totally bought in and they're like, yep, that's the right thing to do, to your point, helping them make that shift and go through the emotions of that shift is so key. So if you're very flexible and be like, okay, well, that was disappointing because I really like that thing, but I get it now, I'm over here,
Mhm.
then that will be key because again, it doesn't even mean something was wrong. It's just new data in the market or new customer feedback. We have enough of it that says, I think we need to be thinking about this differently.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And then just to drill down a little bit further, like I'm mentioning resources, but understanding that someone is resourceful, can
Mhm.
sort of lean into things when you don't have the budget to hire someone for a certain specialty.
Mhm.
And understanding that they have that flexibility to until you get to that stage where you can grow and build a team, can sort of lean into things and won't just throw up their arms and say, I can't manage this, because instead of
Mhm.
how can we? Is there okay? We can't hire someone, but is there an opportunity to bring a short term outside consultant into the situation? Like, is someone thinking on their toes and resourceful in a situation is always super helpful too.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, and I think sort of continuing to sort of build on this because it's all very similar, but it
Mm,
presents itself in different ways is like problem solving and being solution oriented.
yep.
Because again, there are going to be surprises. You're going to go down one direction and learn that that wasn't netting the result that you were expecting. You may run into a roadblock or a surprise. And so, how do you work with each other to say, okay, this wasn't what we thought, or we learned something new. What now? And you can't just go, I don't know. Or, well, that's your problem. Good luck with that. Like it has to be much more collaborative, solution oriented, problem solving. So that might be another thing that like comes up in interviews
Yep.
of examples that you've had to deal with that.
Yeah, and also something that kind of rings throughout, no matter what position that you're in, is this somebody that's data driven? Um,
Mm,
can you support sort of strategies and initiatives that you want to focus on or you think is the right direction for your team or something that you're working on with some data? It's important in this world of being moving very quickly, not having all the resources. Usually data is the backbone or the backbone that a lot of companies are trying to build as being their decision making process. So having some experience with that, being able to speak to different scenarios where they've leaned into the data to make a decision is always pretty important too.
yeah, no, that's a great one. And I think to your point, data is always important, but especially when you're trying to decide if something is working. So
Mhm.
again, even if you're at like a 200-person company and you've got a product market fit, you're still adding new features or you're trying to expand the market or you're trying to do whatever. or you're looking for adoption, or you're looking for usability, or whatever the different things are, like you're going to always be asked, why should we be making that decision, no matter what stage you're at.
Yeah. And because as you were mentioning, there's usually such close collaboration, people working in different expertises, but data tends to be sort of a universal language that makes communication easier and makes collaboration easier as you're trying to move quickly within a
Yeah.
startup.